And I really want to recognize and thank Alexis Steen for all of the help she's been giving for the gig and lining up several programs. And we're fortunate to have Troy Smith speaking to us today, thanks to Alexis managing to recruit him. Alexis?
Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure that on this rainy afternoon to introduce Dr. Troy Smith. He is the new Nordic Area Reference Librarian at our lovely Library of Congress downtown. And before joining the Library of Congress, he taught Nordic Studies in the special program at St. Olaf's College, with which you guys are all familiar with. And he taught in the Scandinavian Department at UC-Berkeley. His PhD was recently awarded from UC-Berkeley and is in Scandinavian Languages and Literature. His dissertation and related publications are on the famous Danish author Søren Kierkegaard. And so today for the presentation, I've been curious and wanted to learn more about the Library of Congress's holdings for Norwegian history and genealogy. And since we have really undervalued and underutilized those resources, Troy is going to be presenting us information on how to leverage their vast resources on county histories, Norwegian-American histories, immigration records, bygdebøker, biographies, periodicals on history and genealogy, and other items of interest that he has discovered in his sleuthing for this presentation. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Troy to our group, and thank you very much for being willing to present.
Thank you, Alexis, for the introduction, and to Joel for setting this up, and thank you to the DC Lodge of the Sons of Norway for being in attendance and taking an interest in this topic. I'm going to start by sharing my slides. Can you see just the slide? Great. Let me start by saying welcome, and I am not a speaker of Norwegian, but of Danish, as you may have guessed from Alexis's description of my publications and scholarship. So I must apologize for any mispronunciations of Norwegian names and place names, and I would welcome any corrections you can give when we're doing the question and answer at the end. But I would ask that you save your questions for the end of the talk today. So we are going to start by discussing where to look for Norwegian historical and genealogical resources. The first place you might look is the European Reading Room, which is where I work. It's in the Jefferson Building, the oldest building on the Library of Congress's campus. It was open to the public in 1897, and it's the building where most of the tourists who visit the library go, but also where many researchers go as well, because the Jefferson Building is home not only to the European Reading Room, but also the main reading room and the general collections at the library. So I would just point out that you'll want to keep in mind that the European Reading Room is only open on weekdays from 8:30 to 5, and it is located on the second floor of the Jefferson Building, 2 floors up from the ground floor. So it's like the same system that they have in Denmark, and I would assume in Norway as well, where you go in on the ground floor, you go up one flight to the first floor, and then another flight to the second floor. Unlike in the United States, where we come in on the first floor. Yeah, you'll go two floors up from the ground floor. You'll want to not take the first elevators when you come in the carriage entrance, but to go back, follow the signs for researchers and staff. They'll take you to the back of the building, where you'll find 2 elevators, and you can take these elevators up 1 floor to the main reading room, or 2 floors to the European reading room. I'll also point out that there are some resources online, which are offered by the Library of Congress, which I'll also introduce you to today. There's a Nordic immigration research guide, and Chronicling America, historical American newspapers. Last of all, there is an uncatalogued collection of telephone directories, which can be great for tracking down ancestors or relatives in Norway. Okay, so the image you see here is the southeast pavilion of the Jefferson building, and it's now the home of the European Reading Room. However, well, let me just say how you'll get to this room. You'll come up the elevators. You'll be on the second floor. You'll see a sign for the Hispanic and European reading rooms. You'll go through the Hispanic reading room, and you'll end up here. You'll see a reference desk here with a reference librarian who would be happy to help you, or they can give me a call, and if I'm available, I can help you. And however, this room is not where you'll find the Nordic books. To get to the Nordic books, you'll want to go through the door to the right as you come in, and you'll just walk by a suite of offices and follow the hall till you can go no further. You'll come to this door that says Continuation of the European Reading Room Reference Materials. So we have more of our reference collection back here, and this is open to the public. It may look like it's closed off, but it's open to the public, and this is where you'll find the Nordic countries represented. So here we have Scandinavia, Denmark, Faroe Islands, Finland, Greenland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. And this is on the last aisle to the right. So in our reading room reference collection, there are some books that might be of interest to Norwegian genealogists. You don't have to worry about writing down all these titles, because I will be sharing my slide deck with Joel and Alexis, and they can send it out to you. I'll also be sending an article, which I'll mention later. And the links next to the citations, such as this one to Amerikabilder, you can follow this link to the Library of Congress catalog, where you'll see a record for this item. And once you go to the library and head to the back of the building to reader registration and get your reader's card, and you have an account set up, you'll be able to request these items for you. The Library of Congress is different from a public library in that, at a public library, you can go in, you can browse the stacks, you can take things off the shelf, you can put them back. At the Library of Congress, our reference collections are like that. However, you can't check out the books and take them home. But most of the books in the collections, in the general collections, you won't be able to see with your eyes at first. You'll have to make a request through the catalog record, and I'll show you how to do that later. But just so you know, you'll be using the catalog to request the books you're interested in, and they'll be delivered to you in either the European Reading Room or the main reading room, depending on which you prefer. If you're going to be working on Saturdays, you might want to use the main reading room, because that's the one of the two that's open on Saturdays. So this is one book that you might be interested in. The Promise of America, Odes Lovell. Again, with the catalog record that you can follow once you have the slide deck. And Drømmen om Amerika, Invandringen fra Norge. And this is also available in the reference collection. And so you can walk in once you have your reader's card. You'll check in with the librarian at the reference desk. They'll take your card, and then you can explore this reference collection. You can take these books off the shelf for yourself, read them. You can copy them, but you can't take them home, unfortunately. One more that might be of interest. This is a Norwegian family name dictionary, and this is also in the reference collection of the European Reading Room. So you can perhaps find your family name in there. As I said, there's, in addition to the European Reading Room, there is also a main reading room. And foremost in this main reading room, right when you walk in, again, this is on the first floor of the Jefferson Building, LJ 100. So you'll take the elevator up one flight. And as I said, fortunately, the main reading room has more extensive hours. It's open Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 8:30, and Friday and Saturday, 8:30 to 5. There's also an online research guide on Nordic and Scandinavian immigration, which I can also show you a bit later. But as I said, when you first go into the main reading room, there are two reference desks, in fact, and one of them is devoted to local history and genealogy. So there's a librarian who's a trained genealogist waiting there to help you. And it's also in this same room where you'll find the local history and genealogy ready reference collection. This is by no means representative of everything that even the main reading room has to offer for local history and genealogy. These are just resources that local historians and genealogists in general might have some use for. And so it's not particularly helpful for the Nordic countries. However, I'll show you one article that I found in this collection that I'll also share out with you when this is over. And if you go to that reference librarian, the genealogy reference librarian, they will show you, if you ask them for the Norway genealogy vertical file. And I must caution you that this is a bit out of date. It has a lot of websites that were printed out over 10 years ago. But I would still recommend this resource because some of these websites are no doubt still active, such as the Vesterheim Museum. This can give you an idea of where you might want to look on the web for Norway genealogical resources. And again, this is something that you have to ask the genealogy librarian for, and they'll go back to another room and get it for you. So going back to the local history and genealogy ready reference collection, if you're looking for Norwegian ancestors who settled somewhere in America, these American local histories might be of some use for your research. If you're interested in a particular county or town, you might find something here on the shelves. And there are also these genealogies for America in particular. And again, this is just sort of the tip of the iceberg. This is the more general stuff. We're going to get to the more Nordic specific stuff in just a moment. So the one article that I would recommend from this collection is in the Harvard Encyclopedia of American Ethnic Groups. And there's an article on Norwegian Americans in this encyclopedia, which I've copied, and again I'll share with you once we're done. But I know I learned a lot from this article. It might be a review for some of you, but it's a good place to start if you want to get sort of the big picture of the Norwegian experience in America. Okay, so imagine yourself, you're in the local history and genealogy ready reference collection and sort of the antechamber to the main reading room. And then you'll walk into the main reading room itself. You'll see this incredibly high ceiling with a mural painted at the top of the cupola. You'll see the statues of famous thinkers and authors lining the top of the balustrade along the room. And you won't want to get too distracted by all of that, because if you're doing genealogical research, you'll want to go to alcove 3, deck 7 of the main reading room. And so these alcoves and decks, they go around the room in numerical order. So you just kind of might have to work your way around. Just to give you a rough idea of where this is maybe at about 2 o'clock on the clock if you're coming in at 6 o'clock into the circular main reading room. So it's sort of up and to the right, you could say. So this is where the local history and genealogy collection itself is, the reference collection, that is. You saw the ready reference collection. This is the main reference collection. For instance, there are some helpful bibliographies that are also on this alcove 3, deck 7, such as this select bibliography of works at the Library of Congress on Norwegian-American immigration and local history. You might want to check that out. Here's the citation for that and the link that you can follow once you have the slide deck. And so this is what the local history and genealogy reference collection looks like. It looks like a lot like the part of the European reading room reference collection where the Nordic books are. It's very cold, but we keep it that way for the good of the books. So you might want to bring a sweater to the Library of Congress, even if it's a warm day outside, if you're going to be spending some time in the local history and genealogy reference collection. And the first work that I can't recommend enough is this Norwegian Immigrants to the United States, a biographical directory. And they have these directories for various years. So here, volume, the four or five volumes cover from 1825 to 1850. So if your ancestors immigrated during those years, it's possible you'll be able to find them in this guide, which is a publication of the Norwegian-American Genealogical Center. Another guide that is somewhat dated, but it's in a trusted series. It's a student's guide to Scandinavian American genealogy. Here's the record for that if you want to pursue it. And I would say that maybe one of the first places I would look, in addition to that directory I showed you, is this bilingual edition of Martin Ulvsted's Compendius Nordmænd i Amerika, which was originally published in 1907, and it was based on these countless surveys that the author sent out to all the Norwegian Americans he could find to learn as much about them as possible. Each volume has sort of a different function. I'll show you how to use at least two of these volumes when we look for Joel's ancestors at the end of this session. So here's the record for that. Again, no need to write it down. I'll send the slides out to you. And another one, we want history as well as genealogy. So here's a history of the Norwegian people in America. This is also on Alco 3, Deck 7 in the Local History and Genealogy collection. And it's by Olaf Morgan Nordli. It's an older work, but it's also a classic. Another very interesting piece, also in the same collection, is Norwegian Sailors in American Waters. So if you had ancestors who were sailors and ended up on the eastern seaboard, this might be a work you'll want to pursue. So getting away from the physical collections for a moment, I want to point out that Local History and Genealogy at the Library of Congress has also created an online research guide at the link listed below. And this research guide is for Nordic and Scandinavian immigration to the United States. We have here a sort of the homepage for Norwegian immigration. And if you scroll down a little, you'll see that there are general resources recommended. Some of these I may have recommended myself, others I have not. There are works for getting a historical overview. There's Nordli's History of the Norwegian People in America for a historical overview. Norwegians in America, books that devoted to that, and collections of letters and personal narratives. And lastly, church records, which can be indispensable. This online research guide, in addition to this slide deck, should be a good resource for getting you started. The last place to look, other than in these reference collections that we've been looking at, and this online collection, the research guide that I showed you, there's also the general collections. And these, as I said, you won't be able to see at first. You'll need to find them in the catalog. And if you have a reader's card, you can make a request to have it delivered to either the European reading room or the main reading room. And if you have them delivered to the European reading room and you want to do some work on a Saturday, you can ask the librarian to take the books down to a study shelf in the main reading room so that you can work with those books on a Saturday. Yeah, the general collections, this is what the stacks of the LC look like. You'll see here in the stacks, we also have that same directory of Norwegian immigrants to the United States that's in both the Genealogical Reference Collection and the European Reading Room Collection. It's also in the general collection, so you can request it and have a copy that you can use when you visit the library. And another title that you might want to see that is a periodical is this periodical that came out under three names. First, it was Studies and Records, then it was Norwegian-American Studies and Records, and finally it was Norwegian-American Studies. So you can request volumes of this periodical with your borrower's account, online once you have your reader's card. Another periodical is Samband. Here, the ability to read Fraktur, which is the typeface sort of within that frame text there. It can be helpful to know how to read that if you're interested in Scandinavian genealogy. Fortunately, that Ulfsted book that I showed you, it was originally in Fraktur when it was published in 1907, but the modern edition that I showed you has been transcribed into an Antiqua typeface, the sort of typeface that my slides are in, for example, a very everyday typeface. Here's the citation and link for Samband. Norwegian Tracks. This is a publication of the Vesterheim Genealogical Center. You might want to consult this as well. There's an online resource, another online resource that I recommend, which is Chronicling America. And so you can find a number of Norwegian language newspapers in this database if they have been published in the United States. And there were quite a few Norwegian American papers, as you may know. Here's the link for Chronicling America. And this is what the homepage of Chronicling America looks like. You'll want to choose advanced search. And in addition to choosing the state, newspaper, and date, you can choose Norwegian from the drop-down menu of languages. And so here, I've done a keyword search for Olaf. And so all of those red marks on these pages are where the word Olaf appears. So Chronicling America can be a great resource if you're looking for obituaries, marriage announcements, information about a ancestor's business. It's a great service that the library has done by digitizing these early American newspapers. Lastly, there are telephone directories. These are uncatalogued, so you'll have to go to the guide here, and you'll see that the page looks like this. You can see what the Norwegian telephone directories look like in this photo, and you can request these, and you'll find instructions here for requesting a particular directory if you're looking for a relative or ancestor, perhaps. And you also see below there are links to Gulsider and Uplusning, which are online directories for Norway, which are free to use. So you can see here we have the list of Norwegian directories, and you can feel free to browse that list. Just follow the link on the previous page. So now we'll talk about how to find what you're looking for. I've pointed out some books and collections and websites to you, but what if you're looking for something very specific? Well, I'm going to tell you now how to search the catalog at the Library of Congress. Here's the link for the catalog, and this is what the catalog page looks like. You'll see there's a Google style keyword search function here. And I've entered bygdebøker in the search field. So this is what comes up. We get 193 records when we search bygdebøker as a keyword. That's one way you can go about your business. On the other hand, another way to search is to browse the catalog by call number. And see, the Library of Congress has an alphanumeric classification system that runs from A to Z, with each letter representing a different class. For Class C, Auxiliary Sciences of History, the subclass CS is devoted to genealogy. And for Norwegian and for genealogy, personal and family names for Norway, you'll want to start with CS 2590. And I'll show you how to do that using the browse functionality of the Library of Congress catalog. There's another place you can look. You could look under Class D, History, General and Old World. And Norway can be found under the subclass DL 401 to 596. So you can see here. You may be particularly interested in Norway, local history and description, DL 576 to 596. And I'll show you how to use these classification numbers to find items in the catalog in just a moment. So for searching Norway local history, you'll want to search DL 576 and beyond. You can also look in Class E, History America, E184 to E185.98, which includes works on different elements of the American population. And for elements in the population, Norwegians, you'll want to look at E184.S2. So how do you actually do this? Well, from the catalog page, you'll see on the right under search options, you can select browse from the drop-down menu. So you'll want to do that. And let's try CS 2590 for genealogy, personal and family names. So I'm gonna select call number, LC class number from the browse menu on the left, and on the right, I'm going to put CS 2590 into the field. Let's see what that gives us. So we have tilläggelse Andre's family noun. I apologize for pronouncing that Danish wise, but there it is. There's and you can keep going down the list and see all the works that have been classified for genealogy, personal and family names for Norway. Okay. Let's try another browse with DL 576, Norway local history. So again, you'll want to choose call number, LC class number on the left from the drop-down menu, and enter the call number that I just gave you in the field on the right, DL 576. And so now we get all the records starting with DL 576 in alphanumeric order. So you can just go down that list and get all the books that have been classified under that subject. Lastly, there's E184.S2, elements in the population Norwegians. So again, we're going to choose call numbers, LC class number on the left from the drop-down menu, and plug in that classification number in the field on the right. And again, we have a list of books classified starting with E184S2, which represents Norwegian elements of the American population. Now we're going to put some of what we've learned into practice. Joel has told me that he has family from Hordaland, more specifically Kvinnherad, and more specifically Mukkebust Farm and Stuland Farm. So we're going to use this information to see what we can learn about Joel's family. One place you can look for subject headings that can be useful to you is this page, authorities.loc.gov. And so this is another search strategy to search by subject heading. So if we go to this page, we see this is what it looks like, and you want to click on Search Authorities. And in this case, you can enter this into the search text field. Kvinnerad, in parentheses, Norway, then 2 hyphens, genealogy. And so we're entering that. And then we find that there are exactly 2 records listed that a cataloger has found, 2 books that should be classified as Kvinnerad Norway genealogy. So let's see what those are. We're going to plug in that subject heading into the advanced search field on the left. And then on the right in the drop-down menu, we're going to choose subject all. Okay? So we're searching for this subject heading. A subject heading is more precise than a keyword search because it only picks up works that catalogers have put under that subject heading, whereas a keyword will pick up any record that has that word in it. So let's see what this gets us. Here are our 2 works, Utvandringa from Olmvikdalen and Kvinnerad. So here are the 2 records for genealogy for Kvinnerad. And on the other hand, I must point out that not every place name in Norway has its own subject heading for genealogy, since genealogy books have not been written for every place name. But in this case, we find that we can find a special subject heading where only books about Kvinnerad and genealogy are to be found. So these are 2 that Joel will certainly want to look at. So let's say just to go back one, let's say he clicks on one of these records here. So he clicked on the first one. And what I'd ask him to do now is to scroll down the page, and you'll see that the call number for this item ends with the words cabin branch. And so cabin branch is one of the Library of Congress's off-site storage facilities. And that means that the wait for this item might be 24 hours or more because it has to come a great distance. So in any case, you can request this item by scrolling back up and clicking on the request this item button in that blue line box. And if you have a reader's card, you can request that the item be delivered to one of the reading rooms. So another place we can look for the Mukkelbust family is in Nordic-American. Volume 3 has listings by surname. So again, here's the record for this work by Ulfsted. And so we see page 426. It has an alphabetical listing of names. On 426, we find 4 listings for Mukkelbust. 2 of them, Ole and Hans Mukkelbust, emigrated from Kvinnerad, which is where Joel said his family's from. And note that Kvinnerad is spelled differently. It has a historic spelling here. So just keep in mind that the name of the place that your family came from in Norway might have had a different name when they left than it does today. This is an example of that. There's also a Jenstuland, note the alternate spelling with an E, who emigrated from Kvinnerad. And there's a reference leading us to volume 2 of this work, page 195. So let's see what we can learn about him. Here we see that Jens Stuland once published a book. Perhaps we can learn more about it. One place we can look is e-resources at loc.gov. You may be familiar with WorldCat. there is an online version of WorldCat that's free for the public to use. The Library of Congress's proprietary version of WorldCat First Search it has better search functionality. So if you're on site, you can use WorldCat as well as other e-resources at the library to do your genealogical work. I would recommend, for instance, using Primo, which will allow you to search all the databases in the library at once. So if you have a very distinct family name, for instance, I would recommend putting that into Primo and seeing what comes out. But going back to WorldCat, it's under W. And so you'll click on WorldCat. This is what WorldCat First Search looks like. And so I'm searching for Stuland under author. That's Stuland with an E in this case, because that's how it was spelled in the directory. And it mentioned the title of the book as just to go back, Allman Podek. So every man on deck. So we're going to search for Allman. You don't need to enter the entire title because there aren't going to be many works coming up under this last name. So you can so this will turn up only works that have Stuland as their author and only works that have Allmen as its title. Okay, and we see here that this item is available at least one library in the world, Luther Seminary Library in Minnesota. So I don't know what sort of interlibrary loan privileges you all have at other libraries. The Library of Congress does not take in interlibrary loans. It may loan out books for interlibrary loan, but it doesn't take in books as a general rule. And so if you really want to see this book, Joel, you might have to borrow it using your account at another library. But you at least know that it's at Luther Seminary in Minnesota. So now I will say tak. And I look forward to answering your questions and listening to your comments. If you'd like to schedule a research appointment, please email me at tsmith@loc.gov. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Troy. Actually, Jens Stuland was my grandfather's uncle.
Okay.
They actually emigrated together on the same ship in 1892. And I was aware of the book that he had done. That kind of brings us back to our topic for next month, because Jens was very well known as a lay minister and a Haugian. He supported the doctrines of Hans Nielsen Hauge. So so I'm going to have to send Alan down to Luther College to get the book, I think.
Yeah. I hope it's not too far a trip.
Luther College is in Iowa.
Yeah, so this was Luther Seminary in Minnesota.
Different.
It's in I think it's sort of on the border of St. Paul, Minneapolis, as I recall.
Well, that's certainly in my neck of the woods. I could go find that.
Oh, great.
I came up with lots of questions. I bet I forgot. Well, the first one was, should I find a book, a physical book, are scanning options available, or can I take photographs of pages or copies, or?
Yeah. So books in the general collection, you are you as a general rule, you're allowed to photograph and copy those. There is a photocopier in the European reading room. that you can use. There's also a scanner that you can use, and it has a card reader, so you can put money on your account and pay for it that way.
Are phones allowed, and the cameras on a phone allowed in the room?
Yes, that's it's really only in rare book and special collections where they might say, you can't photograph that book, or you can't photograph with flash. The only caveat I would say, as far as copying books in the general collection goes, is that you all might be familiar with the doctrine of fair use, which says that one can make copies of a work if you meet some of these criteria, such as you're not profiting from these copies, you're not detracting from the sale of this book in any significant way, you're not copying the entirety of the book or the majority of the book. And there's one that I'm forgetting right now, but basically most copying falls under fair use, unless someone were to make a full copy of the book and then sell it as their own intellectual property.
Right. Is a reader's card different than the National Archives card, whatever that is? They're different things?
Yes.
Okay.
Same idea, though, different institution.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned church records in America. Are they categorized by state and county, or yeah?
That's a good question. So that was something I found in the Nordic immigration guide, and if you'll let me go back to my slide, I can take a closer look at that. See. Yeah, so it looks like under church records, they have Festskrift for Stavanger Amt lagt in America, with brief descriptions of regional chapters of this association, followed by a 7-page list of pastors and dates of ordination, background descriptions of many parishes, and photographs. So that's a publication. The school calendar is who's who among American teachers in the Norwegian Lutheran Synods of America. This is another publication by Augsburg Publishing House, and they also have a who's who for a different set of years that was published a few years later. And I can't see how many more records there are, because this is just a photograph that was taken of this page. But if you go to this research guide, you should be able to look down the entire list of church records that they give you, and see if they have any archival documents suggested. I should say that I'm new to this position, and I'm also learning the collections myself. And one of the things I'm going to be learning is, what do we have in the way of Scandinavian American materials in the manuscript division? And it's quite possible that there are some manuscript church records from Scandinavian American churches in the manuscript division, but that's something that I'll have to do some digging for in the future. I'll be writing a guide for Norway, and one of the facets of the guide will be the manuscript division, and so hopefully I'll find some Norwegian-American materials there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You might also consider photographs. I know that the library has photographs, I think probably during the WPA project.
Yes.
And my, the church where I was baptized, a Danish church in Iowa, is part of that group. And I have a program to donate that goes along with those pictures.
Please do. We actually more recently the photographer Carol Highsmith took many pictures of the Library of Congress, but also of America for the Library of Congress. And she took quite a few pictures of Vesterheim. And so you can see pictures of people in traditional costumes, and you'll see some of the folk architecture as well in those photographs that Highsmith took. And that, yes, that is in the prints and photographs division. That's another place to look, and it's also something that will be going into my Norway LibGuide in the future.
Well, I had a question for you, Troy. When you were going through your presentation, you gave us all those special codes to do searches in the catalog, and some of the hits you got that you displayed in your snips said 25 items per page.
Yeah.
And do you recall when you were creating your slide deck whether or not they were multiple pages? I mean, was there really a lot of hits on many of the items you looked?
That's a great question, Alexis. I think because we were browsing, they would just go on forever. You could just go from 25 to 25 to 25. Okay. We were just starting at that classification number. And so you can keep going up or down from that throughout the entire collection, if you like.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we saw with the bygdebøker that there was only two hits for Kvinnherad. So yeah, sometimes.
But you have Froland. So I'm going to get down there again when I get my race off.
Yeah.
To Froland.
Yeah. Look forward to it.
Yeah. Too cool.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Other questions for Troy?
Sure. I was intrigued about this notion of someone that sent out surveys.
Yes.
And yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that?
I haven't read up on Olfsted, the fellow who put out those surveys, but just to give you an idea of the time frame, the book was first published in 1907. So he's getting survey information that predates that. But if you think about the timing of it, if we start at 1824, by the time we get to 1907, the generation who came over as infants or as children, they still might be able to recount their early experiences and remember their genealogies. And so this, he was doing this work at a pivotal time in Norwegian-American history. I think he had the sense that there was even before the First World War, there was an increasing pressure to assimilate, to speak English, and so I think he was he was eager to to retain what he could about the first generations of Norwegian Americans.
That sounds like a potential treasure chest right there.
Oh yeah, it's an incredible work, and it's not only been transcribed out of that frakturskrift, you know, that Gothic typography, so you can read it in Norwegian if you like, but it's also been translated into English. So it's a bilingual text,
Wow.
which really increases its functionality.
Yeah. There's a good reason to not go to Luther Seminary, but to get on a plane and go to DC.
Yeah, yeah.
What
Well,
is the schedule for your pending Norwegian research guide?
the schedule for that, I would hope I would hope to have that finished sometime in the next calendar year.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna be finishing Denmark, and then I'll go right into Norway, and yeah, hopefully that sometime in 2024 I'll have
Is
that
that
done.
something you would want any input on from external folks?
Yeah, I mean that would be great. Anything that, you know, those of you who have been using the LC have found and want to point out to me, that would be great. Anything about you know, if you read my text and you find that, you know, I don't have my facts right about Norwegian-American history, that would be helpful. Yeah, I mean, I would welcome that to be a shared project in a
Okay,
way.
well, Joel, maybe we can, you know, stay in touch with Troy and follow up with members' suggestions or main beloved means of research. Share that.
I would like to mention a series of books that the library has. I used them long ago, but they're
Yeah.
called Germans to America. But it's not just Germans in those books. That's where I found my great-grandfather and two great-uncles who went from Denmark. But they went from the Jutland Peninsula, and so they went down and out of Hamburg. But it's just to keep in mind that not everybody in that book, or that series of books, not everyone is German.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down. Germans to America.
Yeah, it's several volumes.
I would expect we have it. Did you find it at the LC?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Great.
And I think maybe some of it's online now too.
Other questions for Troy?
How about the resource that was Norwegian sailors in American waters or something like that?
Yeah, I'll go back to that.
Do you happen to know what kind of information you can get from just like their home port or I don't know.
That's a good question. So just to go back to that, so it's the subtitle might give us a better idea. It says a study in the history of maritime activity on the eastern seaboard. So yeah, I would think if you had an ancestor who was a captain, that you could at least find some information about their activity in here. But you know, this is my impression of this was that this was a narrative work. It wasn't just facts. So you might have to hunt around in it a bit to find what you're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to add something. I was just
Yeah.
about it. My dad, when he left Sweden, went to Trondheim, and he took a boat that went down to Quebec. So lots of Norwegians came into the Americas through Quebec, Canada.
Yeah, I think there is something about that in the article on Norwegian Americans that I'm going to share. That was in the encyclopedia. So as far as how useful the Library of Congress is for people coming in through Canada, that's something that I should be better aware of. I'll make a point of talking to the genealogy librarians and seeing what advice they have for people tracing their ancestry through Canada.
Jens Stuland that you referenced came in through Quebec also, along with my grandfather. And one of the interesting things is figuring out how they got from Quebec down to the Midwest. They down to Illinois and then move on to Iowa.
They just crossed the border. That's what my dad did.
Yeah.
There's a website that has information about that and why they went to Quebec. I just don't remember it. I learned a lot from this, and the same website had the names of the ships, typically a couple that came from the west coast of Norway every year, and the captains. And the reason Quebec is because the early ships to America found out quickly that America had laws on the books of how many passengers per ton of ship were allowed in. And the first ones broke the rules right off the bat. And they found out that Canada did not have those rules. So you could get more Norwegians on a ship if you landed in Canada. And the ticket for the transport was more or was less as a result, because you could cram more people on there. That was the basis of why Quebec. But unfortunately, from this website, I learned that a lot of those Canadian records were lost. So we might not really get to the bottom of many of those. That was a pretty common story for Midwestern immigrants.
Right.
Actually,
And there was a question. I was just going to say there was a question on the immigration paper. It said, "Why do you want to enter Canada?" And my father's answer was to seek employment. And he had to have somebody to go see. And somebody from his town in Sweden was in Saskatoon. And that's what it.
To Alan's point, one of the early examples of people running afoul of these regulations about how many people you could cram on the ship was the famous Restoration in 1825. They had too many people on the ship, so they managed to get to New York and unloaded most of the people, and then the captain had to go to jail.
Yeah, I think you all will be glad to know that I've been in contact with someone at the Norwegian embassy, and we're hoping to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Restoration at the Library of Congress in some way. So I would I would welcome your contributions to that as well.
One of the things that isn't very well appreciated about the Restoration is that I think half of the people on the ship were Quakers, and the other half were Haugians. So that brings us back to my favorite guy, Hans Nielsen Hauge.
Yeah, there's I'm trying to think if I have this book here with me today. There's a book by a Norwegian historian about it's primarily about Jews, Jesuits, and Mormons in the Nordic countries, with a special focus on Norway. And there's a bit about the Quakers and the Haugians there as well. I just wish I could. I think his name is Frodland. I can do a quick search for this title.
Interesting.
While you're searching, I'm also part Danish, and my cousin took a DNA test as well as me, and she shows up much stronger from our Danish common grandma, and she's got DNA hits all up and down the Salt Lake City Valley, because in the early 1800s there was an awakening period in religion, and the royalties of the rules, I guess, a bit, and the Mormons saw it as an opportunity, and they went to northern Jutland and recruited lots of Danes. And I'm related to them somehow or another, but it would go back beyond paper trail. But it's just kind of funny that I look at that, all those bubbles of maps or on the DNA map that go up and down Salt Lake City, north and south. It's there were a lot of Danes that got recruited. They went to New Orleans, up the Mississippi to St. Louis, and across land to the Promised Land and Brigham Young, and then spread out. It's just part of northern Jutland history.
My Danes are from up there too, and I have the same thing happen. I didn't know I had any Mormons related to me. I have a ton of Mormon DNA cousins. I think there were over 1,000 that showed up on RootsTech. So RootsTech's another way to sort of get links to people in your tree. And it's free this year. Well, it'll be the beginning of next year. It's free. It's under the Family History Library and Family Search. And it's not free if you're there in person, but it's going to be free on Zoom, and you can register now for it. It starts next, I think February, maybe.
Donna, what is that called?
RootsTech.
It's the big international genealogical conference.
And what's really fun about it is everybody who registers, if you have a tree and you provide information, the artificial intelligence will go behind the scene and match everybody up and give you a list of those people that seem to share the tree with you, and you can contact them. I ran out of time. I mean, that was impossible to contact so many, but it's a lot of fun, and a few we did contact, and they answered, and so it's worth it. It's just another way to find those links.
So
so I'm maybe related to Alan.
Can you imagine how difficult it would be to with all the wives belonging to one husband in the 1800s to sort out your DNA problems? Good grief. I don't know how many generations that was going on, but wow, that's got to be a mess.
So I found the book. It's the author is Frode Ulevund. He's a professor at the University of Bergen, and the book is Religious Otherness and National Identity in Scandinavia, circa 1790 to 1960. And I just put it into the chat. I'd recommend it. It gives you a good sense of as Joel was saying, who some of the people immigrating were, in that they had strong religious motivations for doing so. And actually, this book, I should add, this book is free, open access as a online, as you can download the PDFs of it legally. Of course, it's an open access title.
Any last questions for Troy?
What genealogy, what Norwegian record is most likely to tell you if your ancestor served in the military?
In which country?
Norway.
In Norway. That's a great question. Yeah, I don't know what we have in terms of conscription records from the 19th century. I think that would probably involve searching the national archives in Norway. And I don't know how readily available these documents are, or how how much they've been digitized, whether they've been translated. But I'm gonna make a note of that, and when I get back to work on Monday, I'm going to see what I can find in the Norwegian National Archives on the web. That's a good question.
There is a Norwegian book called Norwegians in American Wars. If they were in the military in America, I don't know how that information got back to Norway, but it's a Norwegian book, and that's how I found my second great grandfather. He was in the Civil War.
I'm looking for when they served in the Norwegian military, any Norwegian service.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think they're I mean, depending on what their rank was, I would I mean, if they're high ranking enough, there should be ways of finding them. If they weren't as high ranking, I would think that we would have to rely on conscription records, and I don't know to what extent those are extant. But it's something I'll look into on Monday.
And it very much depends on the period.
Yes. I was sort of imagining 19th century, but if you're thinking more recent, then it's another story. No. Okay. Paul?
Yeah, I'll make this may be a little bit off base, and I'll make it brief. I had developed a genealogy with the help of a guy who's the genealogist just for the Valdres Samband, which maybe some of you were familiar with, out of Minnesota anyway. So that was great. And out of the blue, through Ancestry, some guy in Norway was looking at my family tree and sort of was upsetting the apple cart and claiming, to be a relative of mine and presenting sort of an alternative genealogy. And question is, we talked a little bit about DNA. This dude would probably be, I don't know what he'd be now, a fourth or fifth cousin or something. Question is, would doing some kind of DNA test resolve this matter? Do you think, Troy? Or is it that powerful, or what?
That's a great question. Genetics aren't something I've studied. But I'm very curious about this too, and I wouldn't mind looking into it for you. Because I'm curious myself when I think of my own genealogy, how effective DNA tests would be in determining familial relations. I mean, I think now that you mention it, I would imagine that with like a fourth or fifth cousin, you would only share maybe, I don't know, at most 4 5% maybe of your genetic material, if that. But I don't know too whether that's like statistically significant, right? Whether if you tested someone else who came from the same district in Norway, whether you'd be 5% with them too. So that's really interesting. I'll try to look into that.
I found lots of cousins in Sweden, six cousins. Some are in Sweden, some are actually in the U.S. that I didn't know were in the U.S. And maybe only a few centimorgans we share, but that was enough. When you start looking at all the people that are shared in common, then you start getting a sense of where the family lines, and you look at their trees that they've put on, and you can mix and match, and that's a good way to find those links. You can't always do it, but I have been successful several times, and I've given the Danes their history in 2 cases that they didn't know about, and so it is pretty useful. I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, those methods are getting more and more sophisticated. You really do need to have the material, so you need to have your relatives do their DNA too, so that you can.
Or this.
If you test with Ancestry, then you can upload those raw results to the other companies. You cannot do the reverse. You can't test with MyHeritage and load it up to Ancestry. But by testing with Ancestry, you get the links for people in the United States mostly. By sharing it to MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA and some of the other programs, you will get the European matches. And it's free to transfer to those, and maybe about $15-20 will open up all the tools on those others, so that's cheaper than a DNA test.
That's kind of a complicated situation. If I heard it correctly, is to try and if you're DNA related, well, then you're DNA related. It's not if, it's how. But if somebody had an alternative tree than what you have, you're going to have to get a lot of other people that you're related to triangulate their trees and their confirmed DNA matches to sort of come to a truth there. That's not an easy.
Well, you do. I mean, it does take the genealogy. Absolutely. You cannot get around that.
The other thing I wanted to say, and just kind of support what Alan's saying, is that people in these systems put in what their tree is, and people take from that. And so when I've done mine, I've tried to be the best at sources and actually, but you can't believe the number of people on Ancestry. I don't mind that they take it, but I get worried because I'm like, well, have you double and triple checked that? So there's tons of people who just took all the work I did and used it. I don't care. I want them to know, but what if that wasn't correct? I've seen lots of, there are Norwegians that you have to know it's the same set of names, but they're in Brooklyn, not the Bronx. They are not the same 2 people, and people don't put in the effort. So some of this documentation is simply repeated mistakes I only use Ancestry, so I see it there. I don't know about the other systems.
Yeah, that is a common problem, which means that, use the things in other people's trees as hints. Don't copy it. Use it as hints, and then go to the original records.
No, a large percentage of it is bogus for sure. And a source like Ancestry.
And the other thing is, how do you, Troy's here, he's the Library of Congress, so he has all the books, but some of it, I'm sure you all know, we had to ask people in our family, and that as a hint, right? And then try to match that up with records. So that's part of a thing, is that not a lot of those people are around anymore to ask and confirm. Yeah.
And even information from the family you want to take with a grain of salt.
Exactly. Oh yes. Oh yes.
Family rumors tend to have a kernel of truth to them, but you got to be careful.
Another thing, even my mother wasn't straight with me.
Another thing with DNA is you could be, it may look like you're a fifth cousin to somebody, but in reality, you are an eighth cousin twice. It adds up. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Or you looks like you're third cousins, but you're not. The centimorgans are there, but maybe you're a fifth cousin twice, which isn't going to be that unusual in Norway. People, they didn't stray that far from their valley, and it's not like they were trying, but they could easily be a sixth cousin and never know it, or twice for that matter.
Yes, I would highly recommend that you share your DNA to the European groups, MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA, so that you get to work on your tree from that aspect, from the European aspect.
Sounds good.
One of the things I meant to do at the beginning was to note that we have a number of people joining us from the Swedish group, and I just wanted to say welcome. We're happy to have you join us for these programs.
I have one more question, Troy.
Yeah.
You're doing guides on Norway and Denmark. Are you going to the other 3 Scandinavian countries too?
Yes. So there'll be a Sweden guide after Norway, and then I will be. I have my predecessor started a Finland guide, which I need to sort of.
Was that lady? What was her name?
Taru, yes.
Oh yeah.
Taru started.
Yeah, I know her.
Yeah. So that needs to be reworked a little bit, and then I'll probably do. I think what I'll do is I'll combine Iceland and the Faroe Islands because of their linguistic similarities, and I'll also do a guide for Greenland.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I was able to write a blog post for the library about the Greenlandic materials in special collections for Greenlandic National Day on June 21st. I can share that link with you all.
Well, there are so few Greenlanders, I'm sure they were wallowing in the attention.
I hope so. I don't know if my blog got any comments, but I'm hoping it found its readers.
Yeah.
So
Is there a council from Greenland in DC?
So yeah, so they're represented at the Danish embassy. Yeah.
You might have to send it to them.
Yeah, I think I will, because I would like to be able to read at least some Greenlandic, because we're trying to get more books in from Greenland for our collections, or at least books about Greenland for our collections. So,
Troy, have you? I don't know if you reached out, like the Arctic Institute, like in Copenhagen. They just have I have a lot of pictures. I don't on Greenland things, but I'm sure they have. I know they have archivists there. I can give you the name.
Yeah, I was looking at their page the other day. It looked really, really great. I think it would come in handy when it comes time to write the Greenland guide.
Okay.
Sure.
I have 2 names from folks there from a program we did at ASA. They helped, so I could just give you just their email. I don't know if
please do.
Come up with anything, but okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Troy. This has been delightful.
Thank you all for joining us.
Joel, do you have any last remarks?
No, this has been really great. Thank you very much, Troy. And thanks to everybody for joining us for this program.
I'm clapping one-handed.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.